In this video, I'm going to show you the correct way to destroy the Scandinavian defense. So after e4, d5, the best you can always do as usual is to take on d5, and then if black takes back with his queen, you simply develop your queen's knight, hitting on the queen, and there are two popular moves here, queen d8 and queen a5. We're also going to see what to do against queen e6 check. So let's begin with queen a5. What you want to do from here is to forget about the development of the light squared bishop for the time being. Why? Because you want to put your king's knight on c4. Here's how it moves. You will develop this knight to f3, later on put it on e5, and then put it on c4, maybe to try and trap black's queen. The fact that your king's knight will have to sit on e5 someday is the reason why you will always play pawn to d4, not pawn to d3. So in this line, your light squared bishop's development is useless. The bishop that you will be developing is your dark squared bishop. So after queen a5 or queen d8, I propose you open with the knights first, the two knights, and after the top played move knight f6, this is when you go pawn to d4. At this point, the top played move is pawn to c6 for some reason. You see, at this point, black is delaying the development of his e-pawn because he doesn't want to block his light squared bishop, and c6 just creates room for the black queen to escape if need be. So this is when you're going to play bishop f4, which attracts the move bishop g4 in this position that we want to see, or bishop f5. Before that, let's say black plays knight e4. This is bad for black, but it's hard for them to see why. You begin with your light squared bishop development, giving up a pawn like this, and say after queen takes c3 check, you retreat your bishop. Why wasting your tempo? See, black's queen is almost trapped. The only move for black here is queen a3. And look at the eval bar, you guys. You sacrificed your c pawn after allowing knight e4 to happen. So now you go knight g5, targeting the h7 pawn, which most of your opponents are going to move, by the way. The moment h6 happens, listen, you guys, it is possible for you to sacrifice your knight just like we do in the tennis on Gambit. If king takes f7, now you go queen f3 check. If king e8, this is even worse because you have bishop g6 check, and at the same time discovery on the black queen. If black plays king g8, again you have bishop h7 check to win the black queen. Now you need to be very careful, you guys. This is where tactics come into play. In this position, it looks like both bishop h7 and bishop c4 checks are equal, but no, if you play bishop c4 in this position, you are losing due to pawn to e6, blocking the check, and at the same time black has defended his queen. You can't take, right? So that's why bishop h7 in this position wins, because whatever black does next, you're going to take that free queen. That's just a simple demonstration of how to make good use of tactics. So once again, back to the Scandinavian initial position where you go knight f3. Remember, you always want to develop your two knights first before developing any of your bishops. After knight f6, you go pawn to d4. And then after the top played move, once again, pawn to c6, in the master's database, you go bishop f4. It's not much of a stretch. By the way, even bishop d2 is playable, even knight e5. So I don't want you to memorize moves. I just want you to know where the pieces go. That's the important thing. So bishop f4 once again. Last time we saw how bad knight e4 is. After knight e4, you can just ignore this attack and develop your light squared bishop on d3. You don't want to put it on c4 because that's where your king's knight is going to sit someday. So this time black is not going to play knight e4. They learned their lesson. So let's say black plays something like bishop g4, the top played move in the Lichess database, because they want to play e6 now since their bishop is out of the pawn chain. Now here is the thing. Whenever you see the light squared bishop on g4 or out of the pawn chain, you want to start chasing that bishop as quickly as possible, beginning with the move pawn to h3. This is the secret, you guys. If bishop h5, you go pawn to g4. You know you're not going to castle short. At best, you're going to castle long. So this is what you want to do. Bishop g6. Now you can go knight e5 as if you want to win that bishop, right? Or playing knight c4 on the next move. This is the main area of our meet. Knight e5, knight c4. Queen d2, castle long. This position is too good that you can even sacrifice your g4 pawn. How? By playing h4. If knight takes, you go h5. It looks like black can just take your h5 pawn since the bishop is defended by the queen. Well, now you can go knight e5. This is what I'm talking about, you guys. And black will probably lose a piece here. The point is, if knight takes, now you have queen takes h5. The knight is pinned and black can't just do anything. If knight b d7 is played, the simplest is to take like this, a free piece, so you just castle long. Anyway, let's say black doesn't take on e5 first. The other move they may try is knight f6, but still you're just going to be up a piece after a series of moves. There's no f6 because the f pawn is pinned. If pawn to g6, you just go queen h3, and I've seen a lot of people losing after making this blunder, bishop g7, because you have queen c8 check, then you start chopping off all the pawns. Sometimes after you play knight f3 and black plays knight f6, then you go d4. This is when you see most of your opponents playing bishop g4. Remember, in this particular position, we looked at pawn to c6 first and then bishop f4. So let's say black plays bishop g4 because they want to play e6, develop their dark squad bishop and castle short. You see, this bishop g4 move is questionable in these mainline Scandinavian. We have time to chase that light squad bishop with h3 and g4 after bishop g6. Remember, this is where I said you can even sacrifice your g pawn by going h4 because they can't take. You do all those tactics. But you see, the standard move here is knight e5. That's why we play knight f3. So that we put our knight on e5 someday and knight c4 coming. Once you master this line, you guys, you will never have a problem with the Scandinavian defense. If pawn to e6 this time, you don't even want to take. This is when you go knight c4. The thing that I was talking about, look, black's queen is almost trapped. It has no many squares to go to if you can see with your own eyeballs. Once again, all these squares are covered. Not to mention that b6 is not something they can play as well. So the top played move here is queen s6. But see, just imagine if our dark squad bishop was already on f4, we were going to win this queen immediately because of knight d6. But here you don't have time to go bishop f4 to create this knight d6 discovery check on the queen. The move to consider is pawn to h4, going after this light squad bishop. Because if queen c6 this time, you can simply go rook h3. You're about to harass the bishop. Say bishop b4 in this position. Now you go h5. They'll play bishop e4 because you can't take. Your knight is pinned. Well, now you go knight d2. And it looks like you are after this bishop, but nope. You want to pin the queen to the king. If they take, you don't even take back with your pawn. Remember, you have a rook on h3, so you take back with your rook. And this, according to Stockfish, only favors white. Black just lost a piece. In fact, I got inspiration from one old game between Esteban Canal versus one unknown player. This is a famous game which featured an epic queen sacrifice. It started with e4, then the black player played d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5, knight c3, queen a5, pawn to d4, and then c6, paving way for the queen. Knight f3 was played. You can see the white player developed his two knights first before thinking about anything else, and then bishop g4 was played, the move that we've been talking about all this time. Seeing this, black played bishop f4. You see, he didn't want to develop the light squad bishop first. The idea is to castle long anyways. After pawn to e6, immediately white started pawn storming on the king side. If bishop h5, he had g4 in mind. But black here took on f3 because what else did he know? Queen takes, bishop b4, pinning the knight, and now bishop e2 was played. In the mainline Scandinavian, we don't mind doubling our pawns. It's part of the culture. Knight d7, a3. Now look at this move. Black doesn't need to move his dark squad bishop because the rook on a1 is not defended by anything. So this a3 move appears to be a wasted move. Because after all, you can't take the bishop, right? Due to queen takes a1 check. But this is exactly what white wanted. Anyway, black castled long, not bothered about this pawn attack. And then this is where we see the epic queen trap. Beginning with the move a takes b4, sacrificing the whole rook. This is a GG, you guys. Great move. Queen takes a1 check was played. And then king d2, sacrificing another rook. Pap. After this capture, white unleashed an evil move that made black to almost quit chess. In this position, guess the best continuation, you guys. I give you 4 seconds. Let's go. Right. So the move is queen takes c6 check, sacrifice, and black's king can't escape. The only response here is pawn takes, after which you mate them like this. Bishop s6, checkmate. With your bishops, look at this. So this is one game that teaches us how to play the Scandinavian defense correctly. Just remember to develop your 2 knights first, followed by pawn to d4, then bishop f4, and start pawn storming on the king side before playing knight e5 with an idea of putting your king's knight on c4 in the near future. That's what I'm talking about. The last game that inspired me to play against the Scandinavian this way went as follows. e4, d5, pawn takes, queen takes, knight c3, queen a5, then after pawn to d4, black played c6, just like we saw in the previous game. They always play pawn to c6 in the Scandinavian, by the way, just to, pave way for their black queen in case of any attacks. And then knight f3. Again, we see that white developed the 2 knights first before developing any other pieces. Bishop g4 was played, and then bishop f4. Preparing for queen d2 and castle long. Then e6, since the last squad bishop is out of the pawn chain. Once again, white started pawn storming on the king side immediately. We saw that in the previous game, black took, and then queen takes f3 was played, but this time bishop h5 was played, and then pawn to g4, bishop g6. Same stuff, by the way. You can see that we've been doing this since the study began. h4, knight e5 was also playable, but we just want to trap the bishop. h6 was played, and then knight e5. Finally, we want to take and separate the pawns. So bishop h7 was played by black, and guess what? In this position, there is a famous trap worth remembering all the time, beginning with knight c4. This is why we play knight f3 and knight e5, by the way. It's nothing to do with the bishop on g6. Once again, black's queen is almost trapped. In this position, the black opponent tried queen a6. This time, since white had already developed the dark squad bishop, it was easy to go knight d6 check. Now you see the other importance of playing bishop f4. By the way, if you are confused, the idea is after bishop takes, you simply win the queen like that. Don't worry about your dark squad bishop. You have bishop takes b7 and you're going to win the rook. So this is clearly winning for white. Now before I close, let me show you what to do if black plays queen d8 on the third move rather than going queen a5. Well, once again, you just keep it so simple, beginning with knight f3. Remember, you want to start with the knights first, the 2 knights, before playing bishop f4. Like always, black will try to copy you with knight f6, and then you go pawn to d4. You're just waiting for black to play bishop g4. If they play this anyways, you can start pawn storming on the king side right away, or first of all play bishop f4. It's just a move. The moment black plays e6, that's when you start pawn storming on the king side like this, and then remember to play knight e5, trying to get rid of that. So knight e5 qualifies, and after bishop d6, the top played move in the Lichess database. Here you even have a move, queen e2. If bishop takes, you take back with your d pawn, that's the idea, and after knight d5, you just castle long. If black doesn't develop the last squad bishop and plays pawn to e6, this is even great. Because here you even have bishop g5, just playing simple chess, right? And then you go queen d2, you just want to castle long and start playing the game of chess. If h6, the best you can do is just to get rid of that knight. After bishop takes, you castle long, you oversimplify the game. Why simplifying the game like this? Next you want to go g4, h4, g5 if black castles short. For example, here you can just go g4. That's the whole idea, you guys. And then look at this. This is just a massive attack. Lastly, if black doesn't play queen a5 or queen d8 in this particular position, you might see the move queen e6 check. But against this, it's obvious you just block with your last squad bishop, not with your elbow. They play queen g6 trying to, attack nothing. But instead of playing bishop f3, to be honest, here you can even sacrifice the g2 pawn. Knowing queen takes g2 only helps you to develop your rook. See, in most cases, you want to start the kingside attack in advance. Queen h3, here it even makes sense to play bishop c4. There's a little trap here, by the way. This move invites black to play bishop g4, thinking they are pinning your knight. But first, you have a lot of things that you can do in this position. You have bishop takes f7 check and knight e5, then win back that poor bishop. You also have rook g3 at worst, and then grab that bishop but the most fancy move in this position is to win a piece or winning the bishop right away with rook takes g4. Say, what happens if queen takes? That doesn't look like winning a free piece. Well, you have bishop takes f7 check. If they take, you win the free queen like this. If king d8, the move is queen e2 here. You are not mating anytime soon, but you have an advantage. It appears you are down an exchange or down some material, but you have all sorts of things coming. If knight d7, for example, you go bishop e6, attacking the queen, and say after queen g2, you go queen d3. This is the whole idea. This piece is dead, and probably you'll meet your opponent very fast. Oh, let's just say black doesn't play knight d7 here. What about knight f6, maybe guarding the d7 square? Well, once again, you have bishop e6. Yeah, but black can play queen h5. Whoa, but now you have knight e4. For example, if this you take, attacking this, if pawn to c6, you have queen d4 check. If queen c7, you have d3, and black's development is just too slow. Anyway, this is how you can play against the Scandinavian defense in a very mature way. And if you want to know how to play against the Portuguese gambit, where black starts with knight f6, not taking on d5 first, well, you can watch the video that has popped up in the card above. By the way, the Portuguese gambit happens after you play pawn to d4 and black plays bishop g4. So if you want to know how to beat this version of the Scandinavian, make sure to watch the video that is in the card above. Now, time for you to go and check out my new E5 defense course, which I have also linked in the comment section down below. And I'm glad to say, so far it has received a lot of attention and people are getting it like crazy. So it's an opening response that you try against white's E4 opening. You're going to learn how to play against the Scotch, the Royal Pace, the Bishop's opening, 3 Knights opening, the 4 Knights game, the Vienna game, even the Italian game. So it's the complete E5 defense course that I just launched with my team. You better go and check it out. Thank you so much for watching this video. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye bye.